Welcome to Life by Design podcast, where Jessilyn and Brian Persson. Are you struggling to align your financial goals or confidently invest in real estate as a couple?
That's why we created this podcast and the Riches, Relationships, and Real Estate program to help you build wealth and strengthen your relationship. Visit weekendwealth.ca to take your quiz and discover your real estate investor type. Let's create the life you deserve together.
Today, we're going to share some crazy real estate stories. So in this episode, we're sharing a collection of personal stories from our journey in real estate investing. Real estate requires a certain grit and sometimes a bit of what we call unreasonableness. So we thought it'd be fun and maybe insightful to talk about some of the wild, unexpected things we found ourselves doing along the way.
Mm-hmm. So what's the first story you would like to tell? I believe we decided it was your story first.
Yes. I think we've shared some parts of this, if not all of it at some point in our journey. But back in 2017, you came home from work one day and you said, "That's it. I'm maxed out. No more real estate for us." And my inner dialogue was like, nope. We still have room. And so you went to Saskatoon that weekend because you were going to check in on one of our properties there. And I did some mad Googling skills. And I found the Real Estate Investment Network group local to our community. And I signed you up. And when you came home, you were not happy with me when I shared what I did, because I did not get your permission. I just did it. But we'd already paid. So you begrudgingly went to the event, and what happened when you came home?
Yeah, and just so the audience knows, this was the premier Canadian real estate networking group. It was not a cheap sign up.
No.
I think I can't remember what the membership fee was, but there was a monthly $300 or $400 fee.
Yes.
And in that $300 or $400, you more or less get one meeting. Like one very, very informative and action-packed meeting per month, but you're paying $300 or $400 for that, so you better use it. And here I am, voluntold.
Yep.
That one Wednesday a month I'm going off to this real estate club. So it's different, yeah. But the very, very first meeting that I went to, I realized that I had walked into a room full of people who were already doing what we wanted to do, and we simply just didn't know how to do it. And all of a sudden I was surrounded by stories of literally everything I had experienced already, and things I wasn't going to even experience for years to come. And I was completely supported in that room. So you're an early to bed person, and I remember we went out for a beer with a lot of the guys who had gone to that club and the girls. And we were just continuing to share stories, but I didn't get home until 1 o'clock in the morning, more or less. And I shook you awake because I was so excited about what I had learned and who I had met and everything. And I'm like, guess what? And you just were like, "Honey, in the morning."
Yep.
I'm going to bed now. Don't care. I don't care about what I did to you.
One that I didn't care, there's a time and a place.
Yeah.
And that was my time for sleep.
But it turned a lot of corners for us in our real estate career. Like it opened up doors. It did all kinds of different things. And I think the argument would have gone on probably another 3 or 4 months if you had asked me if I wanted to go to the club.
Oh yeah, you would have been a hard no. You'd be like, "I don't know. I don't need it. I don't have time. I already told you I don't have time for more property." Like I knew. Yeah. And when I found it, I'm like, this one sounds good. Obviously I didn't have experience with it, so I couldn't explain it, but all you could do is show up and see what it was like. And then your first experience was so incredible, but it showcased things that I knew were possible, but at the time I didn't know how to explain it to you, right? And even if I tried, well, let's be honest, I'm your wife, and you already felt maxed out. And sometimes we just don't want our partner to tell us we can do more.
Yeah. And I mean, ultimately that turned into part of our program. that we teach other couples, and that is sometimes you got to bring in outside advice.
Exactly.
Your relationship is not an island, and sometimes you need other people to say the exact same thing that or what you believe is the exact same thing. Anyway, it's often not, but rephrase it or reframe it in a way that somebody else is seeing it, and that way your partner sees it differently.
Yeah, so it was a great experience to showcase how I put you in a different space because what I knew I couldn't articulate, someone else thankfully was able to, and you got it, right? So that, like you said, in our course where we teach other people to use third-party people to help explain your situation or support you or whatever it is. And this was a great example for us to have actually walked through it ourselves. And then from there, that just lent great advantage for me to know that sometimes I just know things, and I since then have signed you up for other things. And it took some time for us to understand that relationship dynamic between us.
Yep.
But now we got to a point where you just trust me. Because I don't go and sign you up for like everything all the time. But periodically throughout the years, there are certain things I'm like, you should try this, or I'm signing you up. And now you're like, yep, I understand. My wife feels there's a lesson in there, and I'll get it.
Yeah, yeah. And it's the difference between probably feeling and knowing. Like your gut says, hey, this is the right direction.
Yeah.
Let's find someone else who knows and can explain it like logically and mentally in a way that someone else can understand, like your partner.
Yes.
I was at a real estate event this last weekend, and I actually met a couple that was very similar to us in this operation. It was a realtor, and his wife had come along to the event and also brought their 2-year-old daughter. And I was curious, why here? Like, you guys are really, sort of unreasonable in bringing your 2-year-old daughter to a 3-day real estate conference. Sounded crazy to me. And the realtor, the man, he was like, yeah, I do this and this, and this is my wife, and she makes sure that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And I'm like, oh, I got one of those too.
That's right. There's a plan, and we make sure you follow it.
Yeah. But it really, as soon as he said that, I could hear the roles that they played, right? And how they were distinct, and how they really fell into their roles, and there was no grievances about like what role they were playing in their relationship. It was just, I'm the pusher, you're the doer. Like, this is how we're gonna do it. This is the way it's gonna get executed. And there was no like issues inside of the relationship. It was just exactly the way it should be.
Yeah. So it worked out well.
Yes.
Let's move on to another story. I know we've got several since we've been in real estate for well over 15, 16 years now. Years ago, the first time I got to see the property that you bought, actually before we even met, in another province, I was excited to see what this property was in this city I'd never been to. I was looking forward to exploring it. And then we get there, and you found out there was an issue on, I think, the roof or part of the house.
Yep.
And then we went to the neighbors because there wasn't not a big gap between the two homes. No. And so you wanted to go into her house ask her to go in her house to see if you could look at what was going on out her window into our space. And I remember you knocked on the door, and she answered, and you were chatting with her, and I was just standing there. And I think you asked if you could come in or something.
Yeah, I asked if I could come in. So to back up, this is an old sort of wartime house in Saskatoon, and you're right, the housing was quite close together. Like, you could virtually touch both exteriors of the houses. And there was some water damage coming in from what I knew, an open hole somewhere, probably a vent up in the ceiling. And so we went, I also knew the neighbor's kitchen window pointed directly at my roof where that damage was happening.
Yeah. So
I was like, I need to get to that kitchen window. And so we knocked on the neighbor's door, and it was like, hi, can I would really like to come in and just look through your kitchen window to see if I can see the damage on my property, right? And I had already met this lady before a couple of times, so it's not like she didn't know me. And she basically said no, and I said okay, and walked on in anyway.
You walked in, you took your shoes off, and you went upstairs, and I'm looking at you like, oh my God, I would never have
Yeah. And
entered that door.
but to like, just for the audience, I was not rude about it
No.
and or like disrespectful in any way. And I learned earlier on that if you just really smother a lot of kindness and goodness onto people and just are super thankful, like truly thankful for what they're providing you,
Yeah.
it can go a long, long way. And she ended up allowing me into her house, and I didn't realize, but she had a special needs child with ADHD or autism. I'm not sure what it was, but that's part of the reason why she didn't want me in the house, was that she didn't know if I was going to upset the child.
Yeah.
Yeah. So looking back, it maybe wasn't the smartest of plans, but at the same time, that the real estate investor unreasonableness in me said, this is the clearest, most direct solution to my problem.
Right.
And all it requires is me looking out of a neighbor's kitchen window, and like that should not be a huge leap.
Yeah, and it did go well. We were in and we got to chat, and we met her daughter, and she was fine. She actually got along with us, and we chatted for a bit, and you were able to help her at other times throughout the ownership of our property. So, but still, just to think back, if that was me, I would have just been like, okay, and I would have walked away. Whereas you just went right in. I was like, ooh.
And that's what most people do, is when they get a no, they just shut that avenue down. But as a real estate investor, or even as a just a good salesperson or a good negotiator, when you're buying property, you can't accept no. You just have to know how to navigate around no. And that might look like, being super, super friendly, or maybe like scratching their back a little bit in order for them to scratch your back in a negotiation, whatever it like might look like. And that's basically what I did, is I was just like making sure I was very non-offensive, but very clear on what I needed to do, very clear on how long I wasn't going to be in the house, which was on the order of minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but you got to do it. You can't take no sometimes.
Yeah. You got to be willing to do things that can be uncomfortable.
Yep.
Or something you might not have considered prior to. And I know you shared a great story the other day about a couple who drove here.
Yes.
3 hours. They dropped their kids off at daycare, you said. They drove here, which was 3 hours, for 45 minutes to view a property, to drive 3 hours back to be able to get their kids from daycare. I'm like, wow, that is 6 hours of driving for a 45-minute viewing. But that's what they had to do for them to see that property, knowing that they had children that you don't want to be bringing on this drive. And with the exception of having to find other care for them if they couldn't have gotten back in time, it worked. They made it work.
Exactly. Yeah. And they were looking at me like I was unreasonable, because they're fellow real estate investors. They're looking for a multifamily like we hunt for a lot of the time. And that's what they had to do. But they were looking at me like I was unreasonable because I had no interest in this property. I had no reason to come to the viewing, but I wanted to help them out. And so I took time out of my day, sandwiched in between meetings, and like made sure I got myself there. And I ended up coming to this property way too overdressed, because I had a business meeting after that.
Yeah.
But like they were looking at me like, the extra 30, 40 minutes out of my day where I only had to drive 15 minutes was unreasonable. And here they are driving 3 hours to like go view a property, right? So there's shades of unreasonableness when you become a real estate investor. People look at you differently depending on what you're doing.
Yeah, and I don't know if you deem this quite as unreasonable as somewhat necessary, but the time when you had to do 3 move-ins and outs in one of our properties in 24 hours.
Yeah. So similar to walking into that house in Saskatoon, it was sometimes you just act and then you think later.
Yes.
Like for you, when I walked into that house in Saskatoon, you're like, oh my God, like you were thinking. I wasn't in a think mode. I was in an act mode. So only after we got out and we started chatting out of that house, and you were telling me what I did, I was like, oh yeah, I guess I did that. Like I didn't actually rewind the tape and figure out what I did. And this is the same thing with these 3 move-ins and 3 move-outs is I run our personal properties I run really hard because they're all in the local area and I can manage them very well. And so I make sure that there is pretty well no vacancies. That's one of the things that I do with my properties. And what was happening in this property, because all of our properties are suited properties, so they have basement suites and a main floor suite. The upstairs tenant was looking to move downstairs and save some costs. And so what ended up having to happen, if you can visualize this, is that upstairs had to move, it would have been downstairs would have had to move out. The suite would have had to got ready for the upstairs tenant to move down. And then the upstairs suite would have had to be ready for the new tenant to move in upstairs. So
yes.
3 move-ins, 1 house in basically 24 hours.
Yep. And in hindsight, you're like, wow.
And I booked it and I thought it was awesome. And I'm like, look at this, like no vacancy, right? And then like, I think it was about a week later, I went, wait a minute, what did I just do?
That was a lot that day.
But as soon as I realized it, I just went, okay, you know what? I made this decision. What can I control? What can I not control? How can I put contingencies in place that, like, if there's things that go, sideways? And the biggest thing would have been cleaning.
Yes.
The biggest thing would have been cleaning. If either tenant wasn't properly cleaned in that 24-hour period, then I would have been in some trouble, like to try and get it clean.
Cleaner in and cleaned in time. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. But I have strategies for that too. Because very often I try to save some cleaning costs because most of my tenants are clean, and I end up more or less just in doing a deal after the fact with the tenant that if it's not quite to their cleanliness standards, I either offer them to have my cleaner come in and do it after the fact rather than having to like stress out about how I'm going to get a cleaner in within 24 hours and all the move-ins, move-outs. So yeah, it was just a matter of like understanding that you need to put contingencies in place. And the funniest part is that I did it twice.
I know.
The first time I was ignorant, and the second time I actually had done it before, and then I ignorantly booked it again, doing the exact same thing, and I went, oh my God, like did I not learn from this?
Well, it obviously worked out. So regardless of the lessons, we were willing to take the risk.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, you know what? It worked out. I've done it before. I'm pretty sure I can do it twice. And I imagine a time in the future I'll do it a third time.
Yep. And that's just being unreasonable, which is definitely a part of being a real estate investor. I think another crazy story that we did, looking back, hindsight, it's 2020, wouldn't change it. But I mean, most of us are raised like when you grow up, you get a good job, you buy a house, you pay off the mortgage. That's kind of how most of us were raised. And that's what many people to this day do. Their goal is to pay off their mortgage. And we were 2 months shy of being completely mortgage free. And we then decided to completely refinance our home, pull out all the equity, and buy 2 more properties.
Yeah. So talk about the universe like lining you up. We bought into that Kool-Aid of paying off your mortgage, like our parents have done.
Yep.
And 2 months is 2 months free, and then you signed me up for that real estate club.
Yep.
And in that club, they're like, "Oh yeah, debt's great. Like, like you should use debt as much as you can because it makes you money." And then in that short 2 month window between almost paying off our mortgage, joining that club, like imagine if we had paid off the mortgage or hadn't joined that club, 2 months plus or 2 months minus, and the short window of difference that it would have made in our life, it would have been. It's incredible that it lined up in that tight of a time span.
Well, they say when you put it out in the universe will make it happen. And it was short. Like I signed you up, I think in August for your first event in September, and we would have been paid off by the end of January, so a few months later. And we instead refinanced, bought the first property in April and the second one that fall. Like it was like bang, bang, bang.
Yeah. And then a third one
the next year.
And next year because we refinanced the other two properties we just bought. Yeah.
Yes. But again, being unreasonable to be like, we could be mortgage free or we could refinance our house, but have two investments that are going to give us long-term wealth, but also monthly cash flow, never mind like mortgage pay down, and absolutely would do it in a heartbeat over and over again. And we actually are. But on that note, I remember, what was it, 2 or 3 years ago, when we went for your parents' 50th anniversary celebration. We went on a big family vacation, and we were chatting about our mortgages and with your sister and brother-in-laws. And I remember you just nonchalantly saying, what our outstanding balance of mortgages are, and me thinking, that's no big deal.
Yeah.
What happened?
Well, because the whole family was talking about how they were almost paid off their mortgages and they only have like $200,000 balances and what have you. And I was like, oh yeah, I think we have like, two and a bit of $1 million in mortgages. And like, I just remember my brother-in-laws, both of them like kind of just choked on whatever drink they had.
They did choke. And then one actually spoke up and said, I couldn't do it. I
couldn't sleep at night.
Yeah, exactly what he said. And in my head, I'm thinking, oh, you just don't know the power of it.
Well, my head was like, no, like if I had 6 or 8 or 10 or 100 million in mortgages, that just means more money for me.
I think you actually verbalized that afterwards, like, well, that's only like 2 and some million. Like, we want more.
Yeah, it pays us. The $2 million pays us.
And they were just like, nope, couldn't do it. They just couldn't get past that debt and the concept of not paying off their mortgage.
Yeah, and I mean, if we hadn't gone through our own experiences, I totally would have I would not have understood their mentality.
Of course.
But like, we went from basically a few $100,000 in mortgage debt, like zero on our personal residence, and just a couple condos and the house in Saskatoon, to like $2 and some million of mortgage debt within 6 months.
Yep.
So and then we rode that out at that time. We had that debt for years, like and so for us to have that amount of debt was like just a fact of life at that point.
Yeah, and we were
looking for more.
Still are, right? Because we know how that debt now is paying us to build our wealth.
Oh my God, it's paying, like, the last 3 years, just based on how we positioned our portfolio and how the Alberta market is turning out and a lot of things are starting to happen, that debt is making us more money than we have ever made in our entire 15-year real estate career.
Yeah.
Yeah. So imagine if we didn't have that debt, where would that extra money be coming from?
Oh, well, we wouldn't have the extra money.
Exactly.
Period. And we wouldn't have the assets.
From nowhere. Yeah.
And we would have been mortgage free. But
Yay.
great. It's not making us money. It's not building us wealth.
Zero mortgage doesn't pay you anything.
Huzzah. So what's the most important takeaway, I should say, from what we discussed today? So for me, I'd say if you're going to invest in real estate, which you should, there's going to be ups and downs. So enjoy the lessons you learn, the laughs you have, and the ride of the real estate investing world, because it is a ride. And we talk about the ups, the downs, and the in-betweens. And while we're sharing some crazy stories today and some of the great returns we got from it, we share it wasn't always this way too.
Yep. The key takeaway for me is just that investing in real estate takes a bit of unreasonableness. And so start building that into your personality. Stretch yourself a little further every day and do things that you maybe think that you shouldn't do. Not criminally, but like just stretch yourself so that you're consistently stacking on your own personality.
Thanks so much for tuning in. Listen for more real estate investing stories in the next episode of the Life by Design podcast.
Before you go, don't forget to visit weekendwealth.ca to take our quiz and discover what type of real estate investor you are. We release new episodes every 2 weeks, so be sure to hit the subscribe button on your favorite podcast app. Thank you for joining us on this journey to create your life by design.
Thanks again for listening. It's been a pleasure being with you today.